So the next thing was a film by Dave Filoni, which everyone I think is super excited for because Dave Filoni is such an earnest, honest Star Wars nerd and fan that I think everyone kind of universally trusts him with the story, and I think everyone's kind of rooting for him because he's got these really humble beginnings. Like he fucking started on, I think, like Avatar: The Last Airbender, and was like this humble, you know, artist and writer and shit that George Lucas just kind of picked up and was like, well, you're this fucking Star Wars expert now.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Like his creative lineage goes directly from George Lucas.
Yeah,
like the
with
same
no
way that
no intermediary, just fucking like that. Like George Lucas was his Star Wars teacher, which is
like
fucking amazing.
the same way that like you can trace your saxophone lineage back to the guy who invented the saxophone.
Which I can.
Yes.
What's really funny is my saxophone teacher talks about that all the time too. It's something where we're like really. It's like when you practice kung fu. And like, you know, the guys that are like, they have this like teacher lineage to like ancient China or some shit. It's like we're kind of the same way. We're like, we're saxophone martial artists. But yeah, you're right. It's
Dave Filoni is second generation George Lucas, or however you want to phrase it.
Yeah. So it turns out that he, alongside with Jon Favreau, are building, like, they're obviously building the live action Star Wars thing with Disney Plus, right? And this film apparently is the culmination of that effort, where all of that storytelling makes it to the silver screen. It's going to be set in the New Republic era, and it has to do with all the characters we've seen in the Disney Plus shows from the era. I mean, what's really funny is that, like, they asked him about it. He's like, and Dave Filoni said, and I quote, "I'm just excited to make a movie," and I'm so happy for him because he's like, I love how humble he is. Which, by the way. Like, if you guys, I don't know, people who love to bitch about Star Wars, I saw this really great quote from him the other day when he was talking about how a lot of what he's learned about filmmaking is from Rian Johnson, and how like like Rian Johnson taught him about like a lot about like composing live shots and like what lenses to use and like all of this crazy shit. And like and I'm sure that everyone's like, oh, Dave Filoni's gonna save Star Wars, and Dave Filoni's like, I love Rian Johnson, and I cannot wait to see the cognitive dissonance required to get their mind out of that, right?
Yeah.
So this is my big theory for this, and I hope I'm right because I'm pretty sure everyone would shit their pants. I think they're laying a groundwork for this like Avengers style cataclysm, with Thrawn being this Thanos type character that somehow connects with Snoke and Palpatine, and fucking Ahsoka and Ezra and the guys from the Ghost crew, Cal Kestis, fucking come together, and they find this threat, and it's too much for them, and they're like, where the fuck is Luke Skywalker? And it's going to be this whole thing, all of them together, and if done really well, it could be fucking amazing. And I think that while we're talking about the other film being 1 foot completely out of the 60-year chunk of time in Star Wars with the Skywalkers and shit, this is, I think, the foot that's stuck directly in it. Because as we're going to talk about, like coming up with Ahsoka, there's no way Luke Skywalker stays out of this fight. He can't. Like it would be really weird if he did. So I think like it could be totally going toward that.
I think that's a possibility, but I kind of hope it's not.
Well, fuck you.
One of the reasons I like the Disney Plus Star Wars shows is that they are kind of these smaller scale occasions. Like there's nothing galaxy shattering.
Yeah,
like
that's a lot like a lot of the MCU movies though. Like a couple of the Iron Man movies and fucking Guardians of the Galaxy and like all these smaller stories that kind of converge and they all meet each other and fight a big bad.
I think it works for Marvel because its scale tends to be a little smaller. Like most of those movies you mentioned take place on Earth, right? So the stakes are this one planet. It's an important planet from our perspective, but it's a planet. Like Star Wars is an entire galaxy with trillions upon trillions of people on millions of planets. So the scale just naturally gets bigger.
Yeah, Well, except that they've never, even George Lucas himself has never really been able to escape that anyway. So
yeah,
it's I don't know, if it's not this, it's going to be Ahsoka anyway. We'll talk about it. We're coming up on it.